It's a pleasure to be here. We're going to stand up because we found those chairs to be too high, so I hope everybody can see us. Before I have, what I'm going to do is pass the mic to Madonna to share her story, and then I'll share some of mine and my experiences. But I kind of wanted you to understand who we are and, what we do in the community. And so I work for an organization, Working for Change, which is an umbrella organization for several social enterprises. And they employ people that have been marginalized in the community, people that have experienced mental health addictions, newcomers to Canada without the Canadian experience to working, people fleeing abuse, and many, many more barriers people face. And so those organizations, for the Raging Spoon out of this World Cafe that's located in CAMH, they employ people at their level, at their skill level, if they want to work 3 hours a day or if they have time to take off for a hospital stay, they still have their employment. But Working for Change also has leadership programs. And the first one we started was Voices from the Street. And we created this speakers bureau so that people can have a voice and talk about the policies that don't work together, have that platform to remove the stigmas, to sit at the tables, to sit on boards and committees, but also to speak to organizations about things that happen in our lives. And so, of course, when things work, sometimes funding doesn't always contribute, so we had to tweak it, and we changed that to Women Speak Out. And that's, so a 12-week leadership program based on gender issues. So that is where Madonna's graduated from, and I'll just pass the mic for her to share her story.
Hi, my name's Madonna. It really is Madonna. I was born in Cornerbrook, Newfoundland. In Newfoundland, Madonna is a very common name. So I was born in Cornerbrook, Newfoundland, and the same day that I was born, I was given up for adoption about 4 or 5 hours later. I went from my mother's hands to my mother's sister's hands. So it was my aunt that actually adopted me, and thank God that she did, because my maternal mother really was not a very good person. My parents were such good parents. They gave me every opportunity possible, every financial opportunity. I took ballet lessons. I sucked at it. I took saxophone lessons. I sucked at that. But I play a really good piano. We moved to Toronto when I was 4, and my biological mother went on to have 4 more children by the same man, but kept those men and kept those children. So I think what happened to me then is all my life that instilled in me a feeling of not belonging, of not being good enough. But I didn't recognize these feelings until I got clean in my mid-40s. So I was a really good kid. I was a really good teenager. I didn't get involved in drugs. I was an athlete, I played in a band, and I was a pretty good kid, but I was boy crazy, for sure, but one boy crazy. It was just over one boy. And there was some sexual abuse at the hands of my maternal grandfather from the ages of 3 to 10, 7 years. And I also didn't remember that until I was in my mid-40s. I think that my brain has a really healthy mechanism that kicks in to protect me, until I can handle it. That's the way I see it anyways. So at 17 years old, I married this boy. He was 19, and we'd known each other all our lives. His sisters were my best friends. Our friends and our families were intertwined, and you didn't know who was sister-in-law or cousin. We were all mixed up. And at 18, I had my first daughter, beautiful little girl. We were ecstatic. And I want to tell you, too, that at 18 and 20, we weren't suffering financially. I worked for a lawyer, and he had his own business doing cars. And he did all the police cars, and I think he did that to chase me, right, later on in life. He did all the cars that went into the car shows and the exhibition, and we owned our own home. At Victoria Park and Finch. We owned a beautiful piece of land up at Bay of Quinte, Caring Place. We were going to have our dream home built on. and then something happened, and the bubble burst. I got pregnant again at 20, and had another little. Well, no, let me back up for a minute. I got pregnant again at 20. He didn't want this child. He didn't want this baby, so he got very abusive, and I'm not going to go into that too much. He tried to kill me, and after that I had a really bad breakdown, and I ended up in a psychiatric hospital. My parents took care of my children, and I thought that was a good thing now, but I look back and think it was not a good thing for them or for me, right? But coming out of the psychiatric hospital, I didn't have a clue. I had no sense of my own identity. I didn't know who I was. I'd gone from being someone's daughter. My father, I couldn't pour water, never mind fry an egg, right, when I got married. And I went from being his daughter to my husband's wife, to someone's mother, and I had no sense of my own identity. And on top of all that, I was physically beaten and emotionally hurt. I was broken in every way that you could think of it. I was broken. So I went home after a few months, and when I stayed at my mother's with my children. And then a girlfriend of mine came over, and my girlfriends were not married. They were still doing, the discos and the dancing and the clothes and things that girls at 21 should be doing, right? In my opinion. So we went out to a bar that night, and when we were at the bar, we went to a party after, and somebody put a pipe in my mouth and introduced me to crack cocaine. And the feeling I got from that first toke from crack cocaine was euphoria, and I just felt so empowered. I felt strong. I didn't get the feeling anymore. There was no fear anymore. It was just pure euphoria. And I spent the next 23 years chasing that one toke, chasing that first one. And I walked away from my children. I walked away from my mother. And my father, and to this day, I don't remember how I ended up where I ended up, but I ended up on the worst street in the city, and did some of the worst things you can do to get my drugs, and slept on a park bench for 23 years behind a bar, and occasionally I would find I found an abandoned van once in the winter, and I got a whole bunch of clothes from the St. Vincent de Paul box and put it in the back and lit them on fire to try and keep warm. That was the end of that place. Right? I know it's not funny. October 28th, 2000. I woke up on that park bench, and something had changed in me, but to this day, I can't tell you what it was. But I woke up, and the life that I was living, I didn't want it anymore. I hadn't identified as an addict. I just knew, because now I'm 44, right? I went out when I was 21, but now I'm 44, waking up in the park and not knowing what's wrong, but knowing something was wrong, and just feeling like I wanted to die. I just wanted to die. I'm not going to go into the logistics of everything that happened that morning either, but I found a friend who helped me find my way into a detox. And while I was in detox, it was mandatory to go to a meeting, and they brought the meeting in, right? And I went to this meeting, and I heard this girl speak. And I remember her drug was a totally different drug. She wasn't a street user, but everything that she was talking about, her feelings and everything, I identified with, and I got really excited. If you can believe that, I got really excited because I was an addict. And I knew by her story that by being an addict, I could not get cured, but I could certainly get better, right? And I ran upstairs to the woman on the front desk, who was an old lady named Faye. She's dead now, and she used to smoke a cigarette like this, right? And I said, "Faye, I'm an addict." She goes, "Yeah, no kidding." So from there, I went into a treatment center, and I got really excited in there, and I chased my recovery just like I chased my drugs on the street. And then I went into transitional housing from there, where I still am today. So things are going really good for me. The first year of recovery, things are great. And in the second year of recovery, I got sick, right? And I want to tell you first, let me back up for a little bit. On the street, when I got sick, I tried a couple times going to the emergency rooms. I tried to get help in the emergency rooms, and it wasn't a go because I didn't have any ID, and you needed ID to get ID, and they didn't want me in the room because I was a crack addict, and they treated me just like that, and so I didn't get any help, and there was nothing on the street like there is now. There was no outreachers out there on the street like there is now, right? So I didn't get any help then. When I got sick the second year, I'm trying to remember what it was now. Diabetes. I got sick with diabetes, and so they diagnosed me, and they gave me my medication. They gave me this beautiful little wine color leather kit with the diabetic pen in it. But I would have had to pay $60 for the needles. Well, that's been changed now, and the needles are covered, right? But that would have been like 2 meals for me. You know, you use 2 needles. The boxes come 60 in a box, and so it would have been 2 a day. Would have been just enough for 30 days. And really, on assistance, that was 2 meals for me, right? So. Yeah. Anyways, it's covered now. Then I got really bad legs, really bad arthritis, and had to have knee surgeries, knee replacements. I've had 8 leg surgeries, 2 of them being knee replacements. And when I was in the hospital, you know, I'm a heavy girl. I know you probably didn't notice, but I'm a heavy girl. And when the nurses were handling me, there was the last time I was in, the one nurse said to me, when I called her to come in and help me to get up and go to the bathroom, she told me that I was breaking her back. Yeah, I was breaking her back. And then there was another nurse that before I was going into surgery who they had to give me a clamp, you know, to cut off one of the veins and a spinal, and she had to hold me, and she told the doctor that, hurry up, because it's killing me. I was never so embarrassed in my life. I said to my daughter who was there with me, just take me home. Please just take me home. And my daughter, who was so upset, she wrote letters to the hospital. And my orthopedic doctor called me and told me that he was disgusted in what happened. He didn't want to lose me as a patient. He was hurt for me. I went in to speak with him in his office, and he told me that he was sending those 2 nurses back for retraining. Now, I don't know if that really ever happened. Right? How would I know? But I do know that he made me feel better about it, but not enough that I'll ever go back and get anything done with him again. Right? You know, it's a terrible. And the other thing is, they didn't want to give me any pain medication. They didn't want to give me any pain medication. All these doctors that I've just told you about, none of them wanted to give me any pain medication because I'm an addict. So when I tell them I'm a recovering addict, they don't hear recovering. They hear addict. I also told them when I first got introduced to them and I was, you know, planning operations with them that I don't want any painkillers. I don't want any painkillers. My orthopedic doctor told me I had to take them, and the rest of them would not give them to me. I got hit with a piece of glass that flew off an apartment building. It was 4 foot 10 inches high, 4 foot high, 10 inches thick. It hit the window beside where I was standing, and it came down like this and cut this whole part of my arm was up here. And all you could see was the bone. Now, I was fortunate that there was no blood vessels or anything, you know, but it was still painful. And they wouldn't give me painkillers for that, Tylenol 3s. They wouldn't give me Tylenol 3s for that. My daughter had to talk to them. My daughters advocated for me until they came to the decision that they would give the painkillers to her, and she could give them to me. How degrading is that? I'm 18 years clean, and I still don't feel like I matter. As far as the health department goes, I'm sorry to say, I don't feel like I matter. I feel different. You know, they don't treat me right in emergency rooms. I should never, ever, this is what goes through my head, I should have never, ever told them that I was an addict. I should have just gone in and got treated like anybody else. Because once I told them, and I'm not going to say all of them, but I got to tell you, the most of them, right, don't treat me right. And look down their nose at me and don't talk to me right. And it's really humiliating. I worked really hard. I worked really hard to get where I am. I went back to school and became a job developer, right? I worked really hard to get where I am. And the way that they treat me not only keeps me where I was, but worse. That kind of behavior could have caused me to go back out and use. They're confirming what I already thought of myself. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough, right? I've had 22 surgeries since 2002. 8 of them being arthritic surgeries and throat surgeries and my sight. I had a stroke and lost the vision in this eye, and then I had to have a cataract removed in this eye, so I don't see too well. And but I'm a strong girl, and I'm telling you all this, and I'm telling you this because I believe you need to know. I believe that you need to know what it does to people when they get treated like that. I'm not telling you like this because I want you to feel sorry for me, because I certainly don't, because I'm going to tell you I'm a warrior. Right? I'm proud how I've been able to get back up and how I won't let anybody bring me down there again. So it's not because of that I'm here. I'm here because I want to take all this mess that's in my head and turn it into a message. Thanks. Oh, so this October, I'll be clean. 18 years. My family's in my life. I have 4 grandchildren. And last Tuesday, I had a great-granddaughter.
Very difficult following Madonna sometimes. I have to say I'm also one of the lucky ones that was able to survive after fleeing abuse. And before I do my talk, I want, by the show of hands in here, how many people have ever heard or said themselves, why doesn't she leave? Why doesn't she leave? Right? And that's a very unfair question, because that really puts the onus on the woman. And I think one of the steps to eliminating domestic violence is stop asking that question. Why doesn't he leave? That's a better question, right? So, I fled my abusive situation after about 9 years, and it didn't start out abusive. It creeps up on you. It's like we're being groomed. And it starts out emotionally abused, so you don't really recognize it. And it wasn't until I had a near-death experience that I had the opportunity to leave. Now, at that time, I was working at Liberty Health. It was taken over by Maritime Life, and I was making $50,000 a year. I had my apartment, I had my car, and things were rolling pretty well. Well, when you flee an abusive relationship, you have to flee your family, you have to flee your job, you have to stay safe. You have to keep your children safe. And so not only, there's many reasons why people stay, but one of the reasons is falling into poverty, because you have to move, you have to find a new place, you have to find a new job. And things just fell. People believe that there's a safety net. I actually call it a web, because you get stuck in it. There's a lot of policies that don't work together and keep you living in poverty. Now, while I was struggling to get back on my feet, I didn't really seek health care. I didn't have a steady doctor, but my children always did. I found a really good pediatrician at St. Joe's Hospital, and they always had the same doctor. And so now my children are in their 20s, and they go to the doctors regularly. But me, I have to not be able to walk or talk before I go to the doctor. And that's my experience. And I'll give you a little example. When I was 15 years old, I had tonsillitis about 5 times by this time, and I always liked the banana-flavored amoxicillin, and that's what I would use to get better. But eventually, I became immune to it. So it stopped working, and for a month, I stayed home with a sore throat, thinking it's going to go away. And then for another month, my jaw started closing and closing and closing, and I still didn't seek medical help, until my jaw was locked that I could only fit a straw between my teeth. And that's when I went to Wesley Hospital, that was there at the time. And I actually had, the doctor was really quite shocked or surprised or intrigued. He kept looking at me, running out of the room, get resident doctors and coming back and getting more. And I was actually, the procedure, I won't go into details, but I was in a lot of pain to unlock my jaws and and I had to stay in the hospital. But he told me that I was enduring more pain at home than I was in that procedure. And I was thinking, well, I don't know, your hands are in my mouth, I don't know, this is more painful to me. But I went on I was supposed to get my tonsils out when I got better. But why, if I'm feeling bad and I'm not going to the doctor, why am I going to the doctor when I'm feeling better? So eventually I didn't get my tonsils out until I was 24 years old. And actually, when they took them out, when I was coming off the anesthetic, I was biting my tongue. I was sleeping, biting my tongue. So my tongue swole up. And I had to stay in the hospital another week. When I said that was a day procedure, I ended up staying a week. So you know where this is going. My experiences are not the best when it comes to medical attention. But I love the fact that my children have that faith and have had different experiences, because while they were growing up, while we had challenges, there were instances that were really scary. My daughter, going from shelter to shelter, you get communicable diseases. And my daughter developed roseola. And it took I don't know if everybody's familiar with roseola, but it took about a week for the doctors to even know what it was, because it looked like chickenpox. There was dots all over, but there was no raised bumps. And they checked her for so many things. So those experiences were, that was one of the more challenging experiences with my children when they're sick. My daughter also had convulsions when she was very small, because she was a very large baby until she grew to her brain. But other than that, every other time I took them to the doctor, things were resolved very quickly. I was listened to. My questions were answered. I didn't feel rushed. And that I felt really appreciative, and I felt my children had very, very good care. Now, I don't know why in my culture, and this is my experience. I remember going to Jamaica when I was really young, and I heard people talking about, hearing people walk into a doctor's office or a hospital very healthy and dying a couple of days later. And so there's a stigma or a myth around seeking medical care. Not only is the costs, but there are myths around that. There's cultural issues around that. And not too long ago, my best friend, and I'll give you an example. My best friend, her mom was diagnosed with diabetes, and she was on a new diet. She started losing weight over the years, but then it started losing weight much faster. And then one day she wasn't eating, and her daughter noticed and tried to get her eating the next day and took her to the hospital because she wasn't eating. We found out that she was in stage 4 cancer of stomach cancer, and she died very shortly after that, several days after that. And I'm wondering, why do we stay home in pain? Why do we not seek medical attention? What is it that we're avoiding or that we are experiencing that makes us stay away? And because if that was in Jamaica, they would say, yeah, see, she walked in fine and she walked out. But that's not true. We're actually staying home and sitting in pain. And I think there's many reasons. First of all, ID. You know, fleeing abuse, I left my ID. I had to go to emergency rooms. There's also transportation costs. There's also cost of medication. While healthcare is free here, there are other costs around the healthcare. But also, I wanted to, so I found it really scary for me when I was preparing for this talk, because I do the exact same thing. But one of the reasons that it happens to me is because of the stigma I've faced, is because of the times I've been rushed, is because of the times that my answers haven't been answered. And one of the things that I really, and I shouldn't stress on too much, but we know our bodies. We know what's happening. We know what we're feeling. But sometimes different cultures explain it differently too, right? We don't know how to explain it to say what's actually going on so that you can understand us. And sometimes living in poverty can really put a different view on people, thinking, you know, we're not educated, things like that. We may not be understanding. So while going through my journey, I touched on many, many systems. Children's aid being one of them, family court, criminal court, a lot of things. And through losing my children to children's aid, I thought I lost everything now. I thought, you know, I wasn't worth being a parent. I wasn't worth moving forward, being in an abusive relationship, but also growing up in a family with corporal punishment, no hugging, no kissing, you know, your self-esteem starts to erode. And so while going, I turned to substance use. And while I don't know why I choose to do public speaking, because I suffer from anxiety, but in the past I've, you know, coped with using alcohol or marijuana, for example, to cope. But at this time, I went to really to harder drugs, and for some time I was using it, and then I had a visit with my son, and for some reason, like, you're not going to understand what I'm saying, but he said he wanted to come home, and I didn't understand what that meant. I mean, I was floored. I understood what it meant, but I was floored, because I realized that he couldn't hide his pain the way I was hiding my pain. And so he got me to go to recovery. I couldn't stop on my own, but he got me to go to recovery and seek the help. And in recovery, I have to tell you, there's things that people grow up knowing that I learned that I didn't know. I learned about boundaries. I learned about self-worth. I learned about so many things, and I started a new journey. But that's when I started feeling the stigma, because I remember one incident, I had to go and do a checkup because of the recovery, and I was greeted so nice. And then at the receptionist, and then she asked me for the address and why I was there, and I gave her the address. I was in the recovery home, and her attitude changed right away. And I've experienced racism before. So I thought, wait, is she just realizing I'm Black, or like, what happened? It was a 180, 360 that she did. And I had no idea until I started hearing other stories about the stigma that we face when we are looking for help. And so I received my help and I moved on and I joined the Speakers Bureau. And there were so many barriers for me getting my children back, but I did get them back. But while in Children's Aid, and this happens a lot, my son was diagnosed with ADHD and oppositional defiancy, and that's any kid out there, right? And so he was really, really over-medicated. My son was very lethargic when he would visit. And so once he came home, I started to really wean him off. Well, actually, I was on Ontario Works. The drug wasn't covered. It was a new drug, Concerta, and it was $200 a month. So getting them home from Children's Aid, and now I can't afford this drug, they're going to come and take them back, right? If he doesn't do well in school. There's so much stress around poverty, first of all. There's so much stress. People think some people are lazy and don't want to work, but let me tell you, there's much more work being poor than working, right? So I had to kind of wean him off of this medication because I couldn't afford it. But luckily his doctor gave me, his pediatrician, since he was a baby, gave me samples so that I was able to wean him off. And he started to display depression and things before weaning him off, and then I was happy that I did wean him off. But so I have to say that while there were times that I didn't connect to a doctor. Not only did I want a female doctor, at the time, a lot of doctors weren't having new patients. I was moving a lot. I had to go to walk-in clinics, things like that. And I was always experiencing something, and I didn't understand mental illness. But when I would be prescribed a medication that would make me sleep or make me not be able to function or have nightmares, there was no follow-up for me to say, okay, what better treatment? Because I would always feel intimidated going to the doctor. Let me know how much time I have, because I'll go on forever. 1 minute? Okay, sounds good. So I actually, to kind of wrap this up, I avoided going to the doctor because of, not feeling welcome, not feeling, it's very intimate. Seeing a doctor, it's very intimate, and it's a stranger. And I've had experiences where doctors, stress brought a lot of things out in me, hives, issues, everything. And so I felt prodded and poked and all this kind of stuff. And there were times when I just didn't want to, and the doctor would yell at me for not going to an ultrasound or something like that. And it wasn't until I found an initiative with a doctor who was connecting with drop-ins for people who didn't have ID. We talked to that, talking about the importance of seeing a doctor, even though I wasn't seeing a doctor. And then I connected with that doctor there. And that doctor has been my doctor for the past 4 years. And I have to say that just having a social accountable frame of mind, asking questions, not just treating the symptoms, but finding out the whole circumstance is really, really helpful. So I'm going to wrap it up there because I know Corey has some questions and more information will come out there. So thank you.